The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chef.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Friday in the Rip.
Finally, the end of the week. And now the weekend.
Another week.
Yep. Okay, right off the top, let's start with our COVID numbers.
Yes, Captain COVID.
There was a large increase in the number of positive cases yesterday, 39 new cases, bringing the total up to 1,513. We also saw 3 new fatalities, bringing that count up to 76. Bristol County had 7,793, and the state of Massachusetts has 104,667. Makes for an interesting report.
Yeah, and see, this is the thing, these figures. I just actually, it's like we're talking about them now, which is good. And I saw a little segment this morning on television that about these statistics and about a spike, and they were talking about it's because they reopened, and they said no, these are only because of they're contending, and like I said, this is the problem with data. It's inconclusive now because we haven't been studying this for a year or two. They were contending, and you would be a better judge of that because obviously you have the background, but it makes sense to a degree. They're contending that this is because of the greater testing, and now they're finding out how many people had it, and they said it's that argument they buttressed by saying there are less hospital admissions and less deaths, even though the amount of cases is going up. You're not they're having less hospitalizations, less deaths, etc. So look, this thing's a big, giant mess, and you really can't go by some of these numbers because the numbers are only as good as the people who interpret them. And now you've got 10 different interpretations of everything. And the reality is, as we said, the only thing you can do, I believe, as a person is try to keep your distance, wash your hands, and basically that's it. That's it. Try to not put yourself in harm's way. Because all these statistics, I mean, if you start listening to this, you wouldn't have a head left because you're going to bang your head on a wall every time they change something, and it's not going to, it's crazy.
Yeah, you're right. And the thing is that when these numbers came out yesterday, the mayor claimed that it was because of the nursing homes. And I was like, okay, that's a possibility. But 39 is a huge jump. 39 is a huge jump. When you consider...
Same man that wouldn't tell us where any of these cases were appearing, if they were in nursing homes, if they were in, or areas of the city. No, he said, no, I'm not going to share that information. But this time he did. So I don't know. Who knows? As you said, all I know is I'm waiting for the gyms to open.
That's in the next phase. That's sometime in July, which I personally think is wrong. But that's, and I'm sure you think it's wrong as well. It's interesting because I received a message from a park board member, and it's about a story. I guess it says hopes deflated as basketball rims remain down due to coronavirus restrictions. I guess it's the Herald News article. And in Massachusetts, athletic fields, courts, and other playing surfaces guidelines, they published the guidelines, which we knew they were going to. And I've spoken with the park board member, and I said, how are you going to do this? And they said they honestly don't know how they could honestly open the parks safely, especially things like the splash pad. How often do they have to clean the splash pads? What type of cleaning is necessary? How many people can use it? Is it 10? Is it 5? Is it 15? Is it 20? How many people can use it? So there's a lot of big questions there. And what's very interesting is there's question on how DCR, which is the Commonwealth, is going to open Lafayette Pool, or if they're going to open it at all. Because again, how do you do it? How many people can you have in the pool? How many people can you not have in the pool? How many people can go into the facility altogether? So there's a lot of questions out there that aren't being answered. There are a few that I can answer, which really makes me laugh. You know how City Hall is only open to 10 people. And last night, the mayor and the chief of police had a meeting in the atrium with some citizens to talk about how they can make the city safer. And okay, that's a wonderful thing. I think it's great. But that's the maximum number of people that he said can be allowed into government center. So he stayed within that maximum number of people. Obviously, that's 10 citizens and the chief and him. And I think that's great. But people want to get into government center. And according to the guidelines issued by the state, the building can have up to 40% capacity. Up to 40% capacity.
Yeah.
And this bull of calling your department to make an appointment and then basically making a beeline to government center for your appointment and be waiting in line outside the building until one person comes in, so one person can go out, etc., etc. That's just that's too time consuming, too aggravating, and it makes it very difficult. Now, if you have people who want to get marriage licenses, they have to call the city clerk, make an appointment, go down there. The two of them have to wait, and it's two people for a marriage license. So they're gonna have to wait for two people to come out of the building to send the two people in for the marriage license. So this is going to be interesting.
Well, yeah, it is. And to be a contrarian, which of course I have been accused of being a few times, just to be a contrarian, they did actually exceed the limit, because if he had 10 citizens and the police chief and the mayor, they may be the police chief and the mayor, but they're still citizens.
No, but the thing is that
so you had 12. No, I'm just being a contrarian.
I know, because government center is full of employees.
You had 12 people in that group.
Yeah. But government center is filled with employees. So there's I guess there's some give and take. And maybe with those employees and 10 more people, that is 40% capacity. I don't know. I'm not sure how many employees are in the building. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, the capacity of a restaurant isn't determined by the number of employees. It's by the square footage, etc.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure what the capacity of the building is.
So look, the whole thing is BS. Look, nobody knows anything. They make up the rules as they go along. You can go to a hairdresser now, and the hairdresser is leaning over you, and if they can't dry your hair, but they can lean over you and do what they got to do, but they got to wear a mask. But you can't go to a gym. I mean, they're allowing things that have a lot closer contact and require much closer proximity than if you said you can open your gym, but you got to keep 6 feet or 14 feet between a person, and you have a large gym area. Like we have some large gyms in Fall River, and they're losing money. I mean, the General Fitness is in an old mill property. It's a large area. Yeah, you have to restrict the number of people who are working out at one particular time. But, the first thing they do is when they open these things is they're expecting people to follow the rules. And I think those facilities have the capability and the space, most of them, to be allowed to go back into business, and it's wrong. But that's my perspective. Because if you're going to get somebody in a hairdressing shop, which is fairly small, and then they're going to be working on the person sitting in a chair, not that I go to the hairdresser a lot, but or the barber, but it just disturbs me because everybody can say, well, you just want to go to the gym. I'll admit it. I just want to go to the gym. But the gym is a factor in many people's mental health. It's a stress reducer. It's their quiet time. It's their time where they can decompress with a vigorous workout or a moderate workout. And we're talking about all the strain that people are having during this pandemic. Yet that should have been one of the first places they worked on to try to open, because then everybody can go to a gym, regardless of their income. Or they belong to a gym, they can go to a gym, and it's really good for their mental health. So that's just my perspective.
No.
As someone who's gone to a gym his entire life and been involved in that stuff, but I know that I feel better when I punch a bag, and it prevents me from maybe doing it to something else.
I was going to say.
But it's crazy to me. It's just crazy. This whole thing is being run by politicians, and you know what I think of politicians.
Yes, I do.
Like
Yes.
you were talking about how many people you can put in a building. Well, you know the old joke. I'll paraphrase an old joke. How many politicians does it take to screw in a light bulb or screw up a situation? As many as possible.
That's it.
That's the answer to that question. Okay.
Well, it's interesting because City Council President Cliff Ponte said that he doesn't believe that they're going to have open meetings anytime soon. And as a matter of fact, to get the City Council back into Government Center, they're redesigning the City Council chamber. Now, he said something on where they're getting money from for it, but we're screaming we don't have money for anything. We want this. The administration wants a 112 budget, but we have enough to redesign the City Council chamber, which, by the way, hasn't been redesigned since 19 something, and it makes it interesting. He was saying, do we want to have them with 2 layers of city councilors, but they definitely have to have plexiglass between each desk. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out.
Yeah, you're right. And look, as I said, I'm fundamentally a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not sure if the motivation is actually, I don't know, it's as much public safety as it is. They don't want, we know that we're going to go through a tremendously difficult couple of years with the budget, and that now they're talking about cutting pays, cutting personnel, not for their own people, though I'm not seeing them giving up much, but they're talking about cuts. They're talking about implementing the debt override early. They're talking about other things that are going to create a tremendous amount of pushback from the citizens of Fall River. They keep taxing the people. It's like bleeding a stone. There's nothing left. And I think that maybe if this new configuration might help them not see the chamber full of irate taxpayers and city employees. Because if you say you can't have a public meeting anymore, you're not going to fill up that. And you and I know we've been to literally hundreds of meetings where they stacked the thing with little kids when they wanted to get money for a little league or the Girl Scout or whatever. It's always been a political thing to stack the meetings, because the politicians respond to the scrutiny of a packed house, and we all know that. So maybe this is a way of avoiding packing that house with irate people. You're just going to be somebody on Facebook or social media, or sending in a written comment in citizens input. You're not going to be physically there like we were during the recall and things like that, and many other issues. We packed the city council chambers back in 91 when we won the arbitration on the health care, and they don't like that. They get uncomfortable under the scrutiny of a live crowd. It's a live audience has a dynamic effect on the city council.
Yeah, it's interesting. But what really gets me is the governor issued an order that exempted legislative bodies, i.e. the city council, the boards, the commissions, from the rules of coronavirus, which meant they could have their meetings in public the way they normally did. and that order was issued recently, that they could, as long as they maintain social distancing and people wearing masks and whatnot, they could have, the capacity of the room. But obviously, our city hall, our city administration, and our city council doesn't want to do that. Neither does the school committee. They don't want to be held accountable. They don't want the people there to hold them accountable, because this way you only can say things via letter, via citizens input, which really isn't citizens input, by the way. Because what if you can't get that letter to them by 5 o'clock on the day of the meeting? What if it gets lost somewhere? How do you send a citizen's input to a board member? How do you send it to a board? They don't publish their email addresses anywhere. So this is very difficult for people to understand. It's also very difficult for the citizens to say, hey, I want to go to this meeting. I want to be there to voice my opinion, or to show support for this issue, or to show my, disdain to it, something. But you can't. And you're depriving the people of their First Amendment rights. Oh no, I said that. First Amendment rights.
The rights only apply to the people who designate themselves as having that right. That's one of the problems they're having all over the country. But while we're on that subject, it allows me to get into something. I had a conversation with the city councilor who was a little upset, I think, when we said that they didn't pay attention to our letters, and I told Michelle Dion, and I'll say it again, I have to look at the show. It wasn't the last show, I believe. It may have been the show before. But now I have to go back and look through the shows, because I'm sure you remember when we discussed them not paying attention. I did then clarify and say that I did, when I sent that 14 pages in, the only counselors who reached out to me were Linda Pereira. You remember I said that?
Yep.
Was having a meeting with the mayor, who called me later on in the evening, and Michelle Dion. And I made it very clear that Michelle Dion and I were discussing this. Not only she didn't have to reach out to me, because we have been discussing this for a while, because I began to talk about this to her at a Flint neighborhood meeting that she was at months ago. So she's been involved in this process and been talking to me about it. So I want to make that clear again, and I will still look up the other show where I said it, because I know I said it. I made it clear that only 2 people had actually reached out to me about what I submitted, the 14 pages, and Linda and Michelle were the only 2. I know that President Ponte is aware of it, because I texted him and told him about it, and he has acknowledged that he received it. But I haven't had commentary or a discussion with anybody except Michelle Dion, which was at length, and Linda, who was going to a meeting that afternoon. So I just want to let you know that, and I don't know if they've read it. Apparently, we don't know. We don't know if they've read your letter, and that's one of the problems I see, CJ, with this sending in a letter, because we know that the council has a great record of not reading anything, even the stuff that's before them. And then they complain, oh, I only got it today. Oh, I didn't get to read that. Or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. This is why the reason of live citizens input. If you're sitting in front of a camera telling them what you want to say as a citizen, they can't avoid it because they're on camera. They can say, well, I didn't get to that letter yet, and blah, blah, blah.
Well, what's interesting is when you're talking about that, the mayor is butting heads with the city council in regards to the budget. Because if you remember correctly, the city council voted 8-1 to not go to a 1/12 budget and wanted a level funded budget presented to them at their next meeting. And the mayor has said, and I'm going to take this quote from the Herald News, Coogan said, the administration has worked very hard developing a relationship and reconnecting with the state legislatures and state administration. The city's relationship with the state suffered during the administration of the former mayor, Jason Correa II. Quote unquote, we depend on them for a lot of our funding and depend on them for a lot of advice. And we work closely with them. If they are doing it and advise us to do it, and telling why and why not, and this could possibly play out. We're going to take their advice, Coogan said. He said the state itself is proceeding on a monthly basis for now as it waits to see if any federal funding will be provided to the states. Understand something, Mr. Mayor, okay? The city council is the legislative branch. If you don't present them with a budget, they could technically say, we don't have a budget. The city shuts down on July 1st. You're hoping that you're going to put them like they've done in the past, and whether that be you, Mr. Mayor, or it's Mary Sahadi, you want to put them in a corner where they have no choice but to turn around and say, okay, we're going to have to go with the 112 budget because if we don't, the city shuts down. No, you know what I say, city council? Shut the city down. You ordered that budget. He's going to present it. If he doesn't present it, he's, again, stepping out of his lane. His lane is to be the administration, not to be the city council, not to be the legislative branch. There's 3 branches of government in Fall River. There's 2 branches. There is the administrative and there is the legislative. That's the way it is. And I understand your position, Mr. Mayor. You want to hope for federal money. I'm going to tell you now, don't hope for federal money. The Republicans who control the Senate have already said, let them file bankruptcy. Let them file bankruptcy.
Well, you're right, CJ, because listen, we've been on the air about 8 years, I guess. And for 8 years, we've been talking about how Fall River is a welfare city. Not only people full of welfare recipients, but the city itself is a welfare city. That most of their budget is subsidized by state to state. And now they're looking to the federal government to bail them out for their unfettered spending. We've said it time and time again. The reality is that, listen, the city council, and remember city council, we give credit where credit is due. And kudos to you for demanding a budget. Because you know something, you should demand a forensic audit. Let's find out where our money is. Let's find out how dependent we are on handouts. That's the reason that the only thing they do is spend. They get handouts from the state. Now they want a handout from the feds, and they'll continue to spend money and raise taxes and fees on the people of Fall River because all they ever do is spend. We have never seen them go before the council and identify where all this money is disappearing to, whether it be the 50 or 60 million that they saved in healthcare, what happened with the money in the 22 windows. They never can ever identify where the money was spent, but it gets spent. And then they look for another handout. And if they don't get a big enough handout from the state or from the feds, they never tighten their belt. They never control spending. There's never an attempt, and the time has come. And I congratulate the city council on that position. I agree with it.
Yeah, I agree with it as well. And as a matter of fact, Cliff Ponte turned around and said, it's not a battle amongst each other or who knows more. It's about an understanding of the financial picture. I don't think anyone on the city council understands the financial picture at this point, said Ponte. We don't know, and the risk we take as a community going to a 1/12 budget is a big risk, and there's not a lot of reward with it either. So there you go.
Well, you know, the thing about that statement that bothers me is they're not sure of a financial picture, but I haven't seen them demand a forensic audit, ever.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about this 1/12 budget is they can go as far as 3 months.
Well, you know, they continue to say they don't know what our financial picture is. Yet they're going to sit there and say, okay, the person who's giving me the financial picture hasn't been right in 30 years.
Right. Right.
We've never gotten an accurate representation of our financial position in 30 years. The healthcare cost was not 8%. Did anybody want that corrected and see what the impact was on the budget at the last meeting? No. See, that's political rhetoric when you're not really concerned. If you're truly concerned about the city's financial position, have a forensic audit like we did in 90, and you will know exactly. In 1991, when that arbitration finished, as I said before, it started in 90, ended in 91. We had to the penny, we knew exactly where every single penny was in the healthcare system when Ernst & Young got done. We also found out about all the illegalities and things they did just within the healthcare system, not even extending it to the rest of the city. And as I told Michelle Dion in a conversation, and I told the mayor, the only way to fix this city is to have a forensic audit, to know exactly where all the money is, what our debt is, what we depend on, how much we depend on the state, how little we've tightened our budget, how much it's expanded, how line is expanded with no attempt at controlling it. And then we will have a true baseline. We will have a true accurate picture of this is where we stand. And then there will be no excuses. Then every time anybody who's a financial officer at the city comes in, you can say, well, this is where we were. We're here, explain to us why. Identify every single dime you spent and justify it. Then we will have true accountability, and only then.
I agree. I totally agree. And as I was saying, one of the things about this 112 budget is they can go up to 3 months, which is 1/4 of the year, which means for the other 3/4 of the year, they're going to have to play makeup. And it's really not a 112 budget. This is something a lot of people kind of misunderstand. It's really not a 112 budget. It's supposed to be the monthly expenses that they pay. The problem is that at the beginning of the fiscal year, we pay out a lot of money for debt service and insurance and other things which we have to pay out up front. So that creates a problem for the city. And that problem is going to get worse if they don't do something. And that's why I believe we should not go to a 112 budget. And now, remember when we read the story about Chicago? Was it Chicago that we had a 112 budget for how many years? Was that 7 years?
Yeah.
And they're still playing catch up.
Yeah. Well, look, the bottom line is the only way you can ever catch up is know what the hell, how much you need to catch up. And we never know.
Exactly.
But we have at last year's budget process when there was an election coming, we had money. We had tons of money. The city's flush. I remember the mayoral debate.
Yep.
We got more money than we know what to do with.
Yep.
We can play our cigars.
All right. I hate to cut you off, Chip, but we're out of time. Thank you for watching, everyone. We'll see you on Monday. Stay safe and stay angry.